On the Improvement of the Understanding by Baruch Spinoza. Quotes. On the Improvement of the Understanding by Baruch Spinoza, originally published in 1677, is an exploration of Spinoza's philosophical method aimed at achieving a better understanding of the world. This work offers insight into the author's systematic approach to knowledge, truth, and the elimination of errors in human understanding. Central to Spinoza's philosophy is the idea of improving the intellect to achieve clear and distinct ideas, a process which involves differentiating true ideas from false or fictitious ones. Spinoza's emphasis on rationality, the importance of understanding natural laws, and his reflections on the nature of human perception underpin this treatise, making it a valuable contribution to epistemology and philosophy. Quote 1. After experience had taught me that all the usual surroundings of social life are vain and futile, seeing that none of the objects of my fears contained in themselves anything either good or bad, except insofar as the mind is affected by them, I finally resolved to inquire whether there might be some real good having power to communicate itself, which would affect the mind singly to the exclusion of all else, whether in fact there might be anything of which the discovery and attainment would enable me to enjoy continuous, supreme, and unending happiness. Spinoza reflects on the realization that typical social pursuits and the objects of his fears do not inherently possess qualities of good or bad. These qualities arise solely from their impact on the mind. This epiphany prompts him to seek a form of happiness that is genuine, enduring, and not contingent on external circumstances. He aims to discover a singular, true good that could fulfill the mind completely and consistently, contrasting sharply with transient and superficial social rewards. Quote 2. I say, I finally resolved, for at first sight it seemed unwise willingly to lose hold on what was sure for the sake of something then uncertain. I could see the benefits which are acquired through fame and riches, and that I should be obliged to abandon the quest of such objects if I seriously devoted myself to the search for something different and new. I perceived that if true happiness chanced to be placed in the former, I should necessarily miss it, while if, on the other hand, it were not so placed, and I gave them my whole attention, I should equally fail. This quote elaborates on Spinoza's hesitation to forsake immediate and tangible benefits such as fame and wealth for an uncertain pursuit of a deeper, more abstract form of happiness. He recognizes the risk involved in deviating from conventional paths to seek something potentially more fulfilling. The dilemma highlights a critical decision point where Spinoza weighs the possibility of missing out on true happiness, if it indeed resides in those conventional successes, versus the complete failure to achieve fulfillment if such happiness does not lie there, and his efforts remain solely focused on superficial gains. Quote 3. For the ordinary surroundings of life which are esteemed by men, as their actions testify, to be the highest good may be classed under the three heads: riches, fame, and the pleasures of sense. With these three, the mind is so absorbed that it has little power to reflect on any different good. Spinoza discusses how common pursuits like riches, fame, and sensual pleasures dominate human attention and effort, to the extent that they hinder deeper reflection or consideration of alternative forms of good. This saturation of the mind with conventional desires limits its capacity to aspire to, or even recognize, other potentially more fulfilling pursuits. Quote 4. Fame has the further drawback that it compels its votaries to order their lives according to the opinions of their fellow men, shunning what they usually shun, and seeking what they usually seek. This quote highlights a critical drawback of seeking fame. It often forces individuals to conform to societal expectations and norms, thereby sacrificing personal authenticity and freedom. Fame demands that one's actions align with public approval, which can lead to a life lived for others rather than for oneself. Quote 5. All the objects pursued by the multitude not only bring no remedy that tends to preserve our being, but even act as hindrances, causing the death not seldom of those who possess them, and always of those who are possessed by them. Spinoza points out that the typical goals of wealth, fame, and pleasure, while seemingly desirable, do not contribute to genuine well-being, and may even be detrimental. These pursuits can end up controlling individuals, leading to harmful consequences, including emotional turmoil or physical peril, illustrating the inherent risks in allowing such desires to dominate one's life. Quote 6. But love towards a thing eternal and infinite feeds the mind wholly with joy, and is itself unmingled with any sadness, wherefore it is greatly to be desired and sought for with all our strength. Here, Spinoza contrasts the transient and often sorrowful attachments to worldly things with the love of the eternal and infinite, which he suggests nourishes the mind purely with joy and without any admixture of sadness. This statement underscores his philosophical quest for a lasting source of happiness that is stable and unfailing, urging a shift in focus from the perishable to the eternal. Quote 7. Although these intervals were at first rare and of very short duration, yet afterwards, as the true good became more and more discernible to me, they became more frequent and more lasting. This quote reflects on Spinoza's personal journey towards understanding and embracing a higher, more stable form of good. Initially, his moments of insight and mental liberation from common desires were fleeting, but as he continued his philosophical inquiries, these periods grew more frequent and enduring, signifying a profound transformation in his thought and focus. Quote 8. The chief good is that he should arrive, together with other individuals if possible, at the possession of the aforesaid character. What that character is we shall show in due time, namely, that it is the knowledge of the union existing being the mind and the whole of nature. Spinoza defines the highest good as achieving a state of being where the individual, ideally along with others, attains a deep understanding of the connection between the mind and all of nature. This pursuit is rooted in the belief that true happiness and perfection stem from a profound integration of one's consciousness with the universal elements of existence. Quote 9. This, then, is the end for which I strive, to attain to such a character myself, and to endeavor that many should attain to it with me. In other words, it is part of my happiness to lend a helping hand, that many others may understand even as I do, so that their understanding and desire may entirely agree with my own. Here, Spinoza expresses a personal and ethical commitment, not only to reach this understanding himself, but to help others achieve it as well. His pursuit of knowledge is not solitary. It includes a communal element where the sharing of insight and the alignment of desires with others form an integral part of his conception of the good life. Quote 10. In order to bring this about, it is necessary to understand as much of nature as will enable us to attain to the aforesaid character, and also to form a social order such as is most conducive to the attainment of this character by the greatest number with the least difficulty and danger. Spinoza outlines a practical approach to achieving the highest good, emphasizing the need to understand nature comprehensively, and to establish a societal structure that supports the widespread development of this character. This suggests that individual enlightenment is linked with societal conditions, and both must be cultivated to foster the ultimate human perfection he envisages. Quote 11. But before all things, a means must be devised for improving the understanding and purifying it, as far as may be at the outset, so that it may apprehend things without error, and in the best possible way. This quote emphasizes the foundational importance of enhancing and refining one's understanding as a preliminary step towards achieving higher knowledge. Spinoza views the purification of the intellect as essential for accurately perceiving and interacting with the world, which is critical for progressing toward the ultimate good. Quote 12. Thus it is apparent to everyone that I wish to direct all science to one end and aim, so that we may attain to the supreme human perfection which we have named. And therefore, whatsoever in the sciences does not serve to promote our object will have to be rejected as useless. Spinoza advocates for a focused and purposeful approach to scientific inquiry, where all disciplines should converge towards facilitating human perfection. Any aspect of science that does not contribute to this goal is considered superfluous. This perspective not only highlights his pragmatic approach to knowledge, but also stresses the ethical dimension of scientific endeavors, aligning them with the pursuit of the highest good. Quote 13. To speak in a manner intelligible to the multitude, and to comply with every general custom that does not hinder the attainment of our purpose. For we can gain from the multitude no small advantages, provided that we strive to accommodate ourselves to its understanding as far as possible. Moreover, we shall in this way gain a friendly audience for the reception of the truth. Spinoza suggests that effective communication and a willingness to adhere to societal norms, as long as they do not obstruct one's goals, are strategic. By aligning his communication to the general public's understanding, he anticipates not only avoiding conflict, but also facilitating the dissemination of his ideas more effectively. This tactic underscores the importance of pragmatism in philosophical pursuits, and the value of broad accessibility in sharing complex truths. Quote 14. To indulge ourselves with pleasures only insofar as they are necessary for preserving health. Here, Spinoza advises moderation in the pursuit of pleasures, emphasizing that such indulgences should be limited to what is essential for maintaining health. This guideline reflects his philosophical stance that true happiness does not stem from excessive sensory pleasures, but from a well-balanced life that prioritizes well-being and sustainable joy. Quote 15. Lastly, to endeavor to obtain only sufficient money or other commodities to enable us to preserve our life and health, and to follow such general customs as are consistent with our purpose. This quote delineates a minimalist approach to material wealth and possessions, advocating for acquiring only what is necessary to sustain life and health. Spinoza's emphasis on minimalism serves both practical and philosophical ends, aiming to reduce distractions and align material pursuits with broader existential goals. Quote 16. Having laid down these preliminary rules, I will betake myself to the first and most important task, namely, the amendment of the understanding, and the rendering it capable of understanding things in the manner necessary for attaining our end. Spinoza outlines his commitment to refining and enhancing the understanding as a primary objective, seeing it as essential to achieving his philosophical goals. This commitment to intellectual and perceptual clarity is presented as a foundational step towards understanding the world more accurately and achieving a higher state of being. Quote 17. Perception arising from hearsay, or from some sign which everyone may name as he please. Spinoza classifies this first mode of perception as one based on second-hand information, or arbitrary signs, reflecting the basic level of knowledge that depends heavily on external sources and lacks direct verification. This form of perception is common but unreliable, as it relies on the collective agreement or tradition rather than empirical evidence or personal insight. Quote 18. Perception arising from mere experience, that is, from experience not yet classified by the intellect, and only so called because the given event has happened to take place, and we have no contradictory fact to set against it, so that it therefore remains unassailed in our minds. This second mode involves perceptions formed from unexamined experiences, those accepted because they have not been contradicted. Spinoza points out that this type of knowledge is tentative and potentially unstable, resting on the absence of counterexamples rather than on systematic understanding or logical validation. Quote 19. Perception arising when the essence of one thing is inferred from another thing, but not adequately. This comes when from some effect we gather its cause, or when it is inferred from some general proposition that some property is always present. In this third mode, Knowledge is derived by inferring the essence or cause of one thing from another. However, this perception is not complete or adequate, because it relies on assumptions or generalizations that may not necessarily capture the true essence or cause. This type of perception can lead to misconceptions or incomplete understanding of the nature of things. Last, quote 20. There is the perception arising when a thing is perceived solely through its essence, or through the knowledge of its proximate cause. The fourth and highest mode of perception that Spinoza describes involves understanding something through its essence or direct causation. This form of perception provides the most accurate and profound understanding, because it is based on an intrinsic grasp of the nature of things, free from the distortions of indirect or superficial observations. Quote 21. The fourth mode alone apprehends the adequate essence of a thing without danger of error. This mode, therefore, must be the one which we chiefly employ. Spinoza highlights the importance of the fourth mode of perception, which directly grasps the true essence of a thing, as the most reliable and error-free method of understanding. This mode surpasses others in its ability to provide clear and accurate insights, making it the most effective means of achieving a deeper, scientific knowledge of the world. Quote 22. Now that we know what kind of knowledge is necessary for us, we must indicate the way and the method whereby we may gain the said knowledge concerning the things needful to be known. This quote addresses the necessity of establishing a systematic approach to acquiring the type of knowledge deemed essential for understanding. Spinoza stresses the importance of not only recognizing the kind of knowledge needed, but also devising a methodical way to pursue this knowledge, which underscores his commitment to a disciplined and structured exploration of truth. Quote 23. In order to accomplish this, we must first take care not to commit ourselves to a search, going back to infinity. That is, in order to discover the best method of finding truth, there is no need of another method to discover such method, nor of a third method for discovering the second, and so on to infinity. Spinoza warns against an infinite regression in methods, where one continually seeks a method for finding a method, which would prevent any real progress in understanding. He likens this to the practical example of needing tools to make tools, arguing that such a process could theoretically extend indefinitely, but must be pragmatically bounded to achieve any practical results. This analogy illustrates the need for a starting point in knowledge acquisition that relies on available resources or initial capabilities, without endlessly deferring action. Quote 24. But as men at first made use of the instruments supplied by nature to accomplish very easy pieces of workmanship, laboriously and imperfectly, and then, when these were finished, wrought other things more difficult with less labor and greater perfection, and so gradually mounted from the simplest operations to the making of tools, and from the making of tools to the making of more complex tools, and fresh feats of workmanship, till they arrived at making complicated mechanisms which they now possess. Spinoza describes the progressive nature of technological development, from simple tools and operations to more complex mechanisms, as an analogy for intellectual progress. Just as humans have evolved their tool-making abilities, so too does the intellect develop over time, using basic cognitive tools to build more sophisticated ones, thereby enhancing its capacity for more complex understanding. This progression mirrors the evolutionary approach to acquiring and refining knowledge and skills over time, reinforcing the notion that understanding and capability are cumulative and built upon foundational elements. Quote 25. A true idea is something different from its correlate. Thus, a circle is different from the idea of a circle. The idea of a circle is not something having a circumference and a center, as a circle has, nor is the idea of a body that body itself. Now, as it is something different from its correlate, it is capable of being understood through itself. In other words, the idea, insofar as its actual essence is concerned, may be the subject of another subjective essence. Spinoza explains that a true idea is distinct from the object it represents, which allows it to be understood independently of that object. This distinction is crucial because it means that ideas can be studied and comprehended on their own terms, separate from the physical realities they describe. This separation enables a deeper intellectual engagement with concepts, as each idea can lead to further ideas in an indefinite chain of understanding. Quote 26. Hence it is clear that certainty is nothing else than the subjective essence of a thing. In other words, the mode in which we perceive an actual reality is certainty. Further, it is also evident that, for the certitude of truth, no further sign is necessary beyond the possession of a true idea. Spinoza posits that certainty arises directly from having a true idea of something, not from any external validation. Understanding the essence of a thing itself provides the assurance of its truth. This approach underlines the importance of direct intellectual insight in achieving knowledge, suggesting that the most reliable form of understanding is internal and intuitive, rather than dependent on external proof. Quote 27. Whence we may gather that method is nothing else than reflective knowledge, or the idea of an idea, and that as there can be no idea of an idea unless an idea exists previously, there can be no method without a pre-existent idea. This quote highlights the reflective nature of methodological thinking, where understanding how we know something becomes as critical as the knowledge itself. Spinoza emphasizes that all methods are based on prior ideas. Understanding comes from reflecting on these ideas, confirming that intellectual progress depends on building upon what is already known. Quote 28. We thus easily understand how, in proportion as it acquires new ideas, the mind simultaneously acquires fresh instruments for pursuing its inquiries further. Spinoza describes the dynamic and cumulative nature of intellectual development, where each new idea enriches the mind's capacity to understand more complex or abstract concepts. This growth is likened to acquiring new tools, enhancing the mind's ability to delve deeper into understanding the nature of reality. This process is iterative and expansive, with each new insight paving the way for further discoveries. Quote 29. If by some happy chance anyone had adopted this method in his investigations of nature, that is, if he had acquired new ideas in the proper order, according to the standard of the original true idea, he would never have doubted of the truth of his knowledge, inasmuch as truth, as we have shown, makes itself manifest, and all things would flow, as it were, spontaneously towards him. Spinoza argues that if someone were to follow the correct methodical approach in acquiring knowledge, based on the foundation of a true idea, they would inherently recognize the truth of their knowledge without doubt. This statement underscores his belief in the self-evident nature of truth, when approached through a systematic, logical progression based on sound principles. The process of understanding, according to Spinoza, should unfold naturally and without resistance when the correct methodology is applied. Quote 30. Moreover, this is the order of thinking adopted by men in their inward meditations. The reasons for its rare employment in investigations of nature are to be found in current misconceptions, whereof we shall examine the causes hereafter in our philosophy. Here, Spinoza reflects on the natural inclination of humans to think in an orderly and reflective manner during personal contemplation. However, he notes that this approach is seldom used in the scientific study of nature due to prevalent misconceptions. He suggests that these misconceptions impede the application of effective thinking strategies in broader investigations, pointing to a disconnect between natural cognitive processes and formalized scientific inquiry. Quote 31. If there yet remains some skeptic who doubts of our primary truth, and of all deductions we make, taking such truth as our standard, he must either be arguing in bad faith, or we must confess that there are men in complete mental blindness, either innate or due to misconceptions. That is, to some external influence. In this passage, Spinoza addresses skepticism towards foundational truths or methodologies derived from them. He categorizes skeptics as either disingenuous or as suffering from an inability to perceive truths, which could be either an inherent deficiency or the result of external influences. Spinoza's response to skepticism emphasizes the need for openness to foundational truths as a prerequisite for meaningful philosophical or scientific engagement. Quote 32. Let us now return to our proposition. Up to the present, we have, first, defined the end to which we desire to direct all our thoughts. Secondly, we have determined the mode of perception best adapted to aid us in attaining our perfection. Thirdly, we have discovered the way which our mind should take in order to make a good beginning, namely, that it should use every true idea as a standard in pursuing its inquiries according to fixed rules. Spinoza summarizes the progression of his argument, outlining the systematic approach to thought and inquiry he advocates. This comprehensive strategy is intended to guide the pursuit of knowledge by using true ideas as benchmarks for further investigation. By establishing a clear methodological framework, Spinoza aims to equip the mind with the tools necessary for achieving intellectual and philosophical advancement, emphasizing the structured application of true ideas to explore and understand various aspects of reality. Quote 33. Let us then make a beginning with the first part of the method, which is, as we have said, to distinguish and separate the true idea from other perceptions, and to keep the mind from confusing with true ideas those which are false, fictitious, and doubtful. Spinoza emphasizes the importance of clearly differentiating true ideas from false or fictitious ones as the foundational step in his methodological approach. By ensuring that true ideas are distinctly recognized and separated from less reliable forms of perception, the mind can maintain clarity and precision in its thought processes. This careful sorting is vital for building a robust and accurate understanding of the world. Quote 34. Every perception has for its object either a thing considered as existing or solely the essence of a thing. Now, fiction is chiefly occupied with things considered as existing. This quote delineates the scope of fictitious ideas, which Spinoza notes primarily concern themselves with the existence of things rather than their essence. Fiction manipulates the perceived reality of existence without engaging with the inherent nature of the entities it describes. This distinction is crucial for understanding the limitations and potential misleading nature of fictional perceptions when compared to true ideas that aim to grasp the essence of things. Quote 35. Whence it follows that if there be a God, or omniscient being, such an one cannot form fictitious hypotheses. For, as regards ourselves, when I know that I exist, I cannot hypothesize that I exist or do not exist, any more than I can hypothesize an elephant that can go through the eye of a needle. Nor when I know the nature of God, can I hypothesize that he or does not exist. Spinoza argues that an omniscient being cannot engage in forming fictitious ideas because such a being would possess complete knowledge, which precludes the possibility of entertaining falsehoods or uncertainties. Just as a person who knows they exist cannot doubt their existence, an omniscient being cannot entertain hypotheses about existence that contradict what is definitively known. This highlights the relationship between the extent of one's knowledge and the capacity to engage in fiction. Quote 36. We need, therefore, be in no fear of forming hypotheses, so long as we have a clear and distinct perception of what is involved. For, if we were to assert, haply, that men are suddenly turned into beasts, the statement would be extremely general, so general that there would be no conception, that is, no idea or connection of subject and predicate in our mind. Spinoza asserts that forming hypotheses is an acceptable intellectual exercise as long as the ideas involved are clear and distinct. He cautions, however, that overly broad or fantastical hypotheses that lack a logical foundation, such as men turning into beasts, fail to provide a real conceptual framework for understanding. This serves as a guideline for ensuring that hypotheses remain grounded in rational and comprehensible terms, facilitating meaningful intellectual exploration. Quote 37. Secondly, it follows that if a complex object be divided by thought into a number of simple component parts, and if each be regarded separately, all confusion will disappear. Spinoza suggests that the complexity and potential confusion inherent in understanding complex objects can be mitigated by mentally deconstructing them into simpler, more comprehensible parts. By analyzing each part in isolation, the overall understanding becomes clearer, reducing the likelihood of confusion. This methodological approach highlights the importance of systematic analysis in achieving clarity in thought. Quote 38. Now, a fiction that was simple would be clear and distinct, and therefore true. Also, a fiction composed only of distinct ideas would be clear and distinct, and therefore true. This quote underlines a nuanced aspect of Spinoza's philosophy. While typically a fiction is considered false or constructed, he argues that if a fiction were composed of simple and clear ideas, it would inherently be true. This paradoxical statement underscores that the truth of an idea depends not just on its correspondence to reality, but also on its clarity and distinctness. Thus, even a fictional idea, if clearly and distinctly understood, could hold true. Quote 39. These matters being thus understood, let us pass on to consider the false idea, observing the objects with which it is concerned, and the means of guarding ourselves from falling into false perceptions. Spinoza transitions to discuss false ideas, building on the understanding of fictitious ideas. He sets the stage for a detailed examination of false perceptions, emphasizing the need to distinguish and avoid them. This pivot in his discussion serves to deepen the exploration of epistemology, focusing on the mechanisms through which false ideas arise, and proposing ways to shield oneself from erroneous thinking. Quote 40. But ideas which are clear and distinct can never be false. For ideas of things clearly and distinctly conceived are either very simple themselves, or are compounded from very simple ideas, that is, are deduced therefrom. Here, Spinoza asserts a fundamental principle of his philosophy. Clear and distinct ideas are inherently true. This claim rests on the premise that such ideas are either simple or composed of simple components that are well understood. The clarity and distinctness of an idea ensure its truth by precluding the ambiguities and confusions that typically lead to falsehoods. This principle serves as a cornerstone for rational inquiry and understanding, emphasizing the critical role of mental clarity in the pursuit of knowledge. Quote 41. Real doubt is never produced in the mind by the thing doubted of. In other words, if there were only one idea in the mind, whether that idea were true or false, there would be no doubt or certainty present, only a certain sensation. Spinoza clarifies that doubt does not inherently arise from the content of the ideas themselves, but rather from the presence of another idea that is not clear and distinct enough to resolve uncertainty. This statement underscores his belief that clarity and distinction in our ideas are fundamental to overcoming doubt. Doubt, then, is depicted as a state of indecision that occurs not because of the intrinsic properties of an idea, but because of the comparative lack of clarity between competing ideas. Quote 42. Hence we cannot cast doubt on true ideas by the supposition that there is a deceitful deity who leads us astray even in what is most certain. Here, Spinoza addresses a philosophical concern about deception by a higher power, a common argument in skeptical scenarios. He counters this by arguing that doubt cannot undermine true ideas once we have a clear and distinct understanding of those ideas. This argument rests on the foundational belief in the non-deceptive nature of God as derived from clear and distinct ideas themselves. The acquisition of such knowledge about God or any first principle removes all doubt, reinforcing the role of clear and comprehensive understanding in achieving certainty. Quote 43. Thus, if a man proceeded with our investigations in due order, inquiring first into those things which should first be inquired into, never passing over a link in the chain of association, and with knowledge how to define his questions before seeking to answer them, he will never have any ideas save such as are very certain, or, in other words, clear and distinct. Spinoza emphasizes the importance of methodical inquiry and the systematic progression of thought to avoid doubt. By maintaining a disciplined approach to investigation, prioritizing the sequence of inquiry, ensuring completeness in understanding each link in the chain of thought, and defining questions clearly before attempting answers, one ensures that the ideas developed are clear, distinct, and free from doubt. This method not only prevents confusion, but also builds a robust framework for acquiring knowledge. Quote 44. For the more intelligible a thing is, the more easily is it remembered, and the less intelligible it is, the more easily do we forget it. Spinoza highlights the correlation between the intelligibility of an idea and its memorability. Ideas that are clearly understood are more likely to be retained in memory, whereas those that are less clear or complex are more prone to be forgotten. This observation suggests that the clarity and simplicity of an idea enhance its longevity in the mind, supporting a fundamental cognitive principle that understanding aids retention. Quote 45. As, then, the memory is strengthened both with and without the aid of the understanding, we may conclude that it is different from the understanding, and that in the latter considered in itself, there is neither memory nor forgetfulness. Spinoza differentiates between memory and understanding, suggesting that while understanding can enhance memory, memory itself operates independently. This separation implies that cognitive processes like memory and understanding, though interconnected, have distinct functions within the mind. Understanding does not inherently contain memory, indicating that the mind has specialized faculties dealing with the retention and processing of information. Quote 46. What, then, is memory? It is nothing else than the actual sensation of impressions on the brain, accompanied with the thought of a definite duration of the sensation. This quote defines memory as the sensation of impressions on the brain, which are linked with a sense of time. Spinoza's explanation frames memory as a physiological and psychological phenomenon, where both the physical imprint in the brain and the individual's awareness of the duration of that imprint play crucial roles. This dual aspect of memory underscores the complex interplay between the mind's perceptions and the brain's physical responses. Quote 47. Thus, then, we have distinguished between a true idea and other perceptions, and shown that ideas, fictitious, false, and the rest, originate in the imagination. That is, in certain sensations fortuitous and disconnected, arising not from the power of the mind, but from external causes. Spinoza clarifies the origins of different types of ideas, distinguishing true ideas from those that are fictitious or false, which he attributes to the imagination. This distinction is important as it positions the imagination as a source of ideas that do not necessarily reflect an internal cognitive power, but are influenced by external, random stimuli. Understanding this helps in discerning the reliability of various mental impressions and in separating deeply understood truths from less reliable, imaginative constructs. Quote 48. As regards as a true idea, we have shown that it is simple or compounded of simple ideas, that it shows how and why something is or has been made, and that its subjective effects in the soul correspond to the actual reality of its object. This explanation of a true idea emphasizes its foundational simplicity and its ability to convey understanding about the creation and purpose of its object. True ideas, according to Spinoza, not only provide clarity about the phenomena they represent, but also ensure that their effects within the mind mirror the true nature of these phenomena. This alignment between an idea's internal representations and external reality is what constitutes its truthfulness, reinforcing the philosophical ideal that understanding should reflect the natural order and causality of the world. Quote 49. Hence, as far as is possible at the outset, we have acquired a knowledge of our understanding, and such a standard of a true idea that we need no longer fear confounding truth with falsehood and fiction. Spinoza highlights the achievement of a clear understanding and a reliable standard for distinguishing true ideas from falsehood and fiction. This foundational knowledge is crucial because it provides the necessary tools to accurately assess and validate ideas, ensuring that one's cognitive processes are grounded in truth and not misled by erroneous beliefs or misconceptions. When, quote 50, we may also see how easily men may fall into grave errors through not distinguishing accurately between the imagination and the understanding, such as believing that extension must be localized, that it must be finite, that its parts are really distinct one from the other, that it is the primary and single foundation of all things, that it occupies more space at one time than at another, and other similar doctrines, all entirely opposed to truth, as we shall duly show. This passage underscores the dangers of failing to differentiate between the products of imagination and genuine understanding. Misunderstandings about the nature of physical reality, such as the properties of extension and space, arise when the imagination is mistaken for true intellectual comprehension. Spinoza warns that such errors can lead to fundamentally flawed beliefs about the universe, emphasizing the importance of clear and critical thinking. Quote 51. Again, since words are a part of the imagination, that is, since we form many conceptions in accordance with confused arrangements of words in the memory, dependent on particular bodily conditions, there is no doubt that words may, equally with the imagination, be the cause of many and great errors, unless we strictly on our guard. Spinoza discusses the role of language as a potential source of confusion and error. Words, which are tied to the imagination and influenced by physical and mental states, can lead to misconceptions if not carefully managed. This statement serves as a caution about the power of language to shape thought in ways that may not align with reality, stressing the need for vigilance in the use of words to express ideas. Quote 52. Let us also beware of another great cause of confusion, which prevents the understanding from reflecting on itself. Sometimes, while making no distinction between the imagination and the intellect, we think that what we more readily imagine is clearer to us, and also we think that what we imagine we understand. Thus, we put first that which should be last. The true order of progression is reversed, and no legitimate conclusion is drawn. In this reflection, Spinoza warns against a common cognitive error, assuming that ease of imagination equates to clarity of understanding. This mistake can prevent genuine self-reflection and critical analysis, leading to reversed priorities and illogical conclusions. Spinoza's emphasis is on the necessity of maintaining a clear distinction between what is vividly imagined and what is truly understood, ensuring that intellectual pursuits are guided by reason rather than by the mere vividness of images or ideas. Quote 53. The chief rule of this part is, as appears from the first part, to review all the ideas coming to us through pure intellect, so as to distinguish them from such as we imagine. The distinction will be shown through the properties of each, namely, of the imagination and of the understanding. Spinoza sets out a primary rule for intellectual inquiry, to rigorously assess and categorize ideas based on their origin, distinguishing those derived from pure intellect from those produced by the imagination. This systematic review is crucial for ensuring that ideas align with truth and are not confused with less reliable, imaginative constructs. By clarifying the source and nature of our ideas, we can enhance the precision and depth of our understanding. Quote 54. The object aimed at is the acquisition of clear and distinct ideas, such as are produced by the pure intellect, and not by chance physical motions. In order that all ideas may be reduced to unity, we shall endeavor so to associate and arrange them that our mind may, as far as possible, reflect subjectively the reality of nature, both as a whole and as parts. The goal of Spinoza's method is to cultivate clear and distinct ideas that emerge from reasoned intellectual effort rather than from arbitrary physical or sensory experiences. By organizing these ideas into a coherent, unified system, he aims to mirror the structured reality of nature within the mind's own conceptual landscape. This alignment between thought and reality facilitates a more accurate and holistic comprehension of the world. Quote 55. As for the first point, it is necessary, as we have said, for our purpose that everything should be conceived, either solely through its essence or through its proximate cause. This quote stresses the importance of understanding things through their essence or their proximate cause. Spinoza asserts that true knowledge of an object involves understanding its fundamental nature or the immediate reasons for its existence. This approach ensures that the understanding is comprehensive and rooted in the core characteristics of the subject. Quote 56. All these rules become obvious to anyone giving strict attention to the matter. I have also stated that the best basis for drawing a conclusion is a particular affirmative essence. The more specialized the idea is, the more it is distinct and therefore clear. Spinoza concludes that clarity and distinction in ideas are enhanced by their specificity. He advises focusing on particular, affirmative aspects of subjects when drawing conclusions, as this approach tends to produce more precise and understandable thoughts. This principle is a key component of his method, which aims to refine and clarify understanding by focusing on well-defined, specific aspects of objects. Quote 57. Thus, the true method of discovery is to form thoughts from some given definition. This process will be the more fruitful and easy in proportion as the thing given be better defined. Spinoza underscores the importance of starting with well-defined concepts to facilitate discovery. A clear and precise definition serves as the foundation for thought, enabling a more effective and straightforward exploration of ideas. This principle is critical for structured thinking and forms the basis for developing complex understandings from simpler, well-understood parts. Quote 58. A definition, if it is to be called perfect, must explain the inmost essence of a thing, and must take care not to substitute for this any of its properties. This quote emphasizes the criteria for a perfect definition. It should capture the essence of the subject, not merely describe its properties. This approach ensures that the definition truly reflects the core nature of the thing being defined, providing a solid basis for further exploration and understanding. Quote 59. Therefore, we may never, while we are concerned with inquiries into actual things, draw any conclusion from abstractions. We shall be extremely careful not to confound that which is only in the understanding with that which is in the thing itself. Spinoza cautions against basing conclusions on abstract concepts without reference to actual phenomena. This warning helps avoid confusion between theoretical constructs and realities, ensuring that intellectual explorations remain grounded in observable facts. Quote 60. The properties of the understanding which I have chiefly remarked, and which I clearly understand, are the following. It involves certainty. In other words, it knows that a thing exists in reality as it is reflected subjectively. This statement highlights the nature of understanding as it pertains to certainty. Understanding is not just about grasping concepts, but also involves recognizing their existence and reality. This recognition is crucial for distinguishing between mere ideas and their actual manifestations. Quote 61. The more ideas express perfection of any object, the more perfect are they themselves. For we do not admire the architect who has planned a chapel so much as the architect who has planned a splendid temple. Here, Spinoza links the quality of ideas to their ability to express the perfection of their objects. Higher quality ideas not only provide clearer and more accurate representations, but also evoke greater appreciation and understanding, much like the admiration bestowed upon grander architectural achievements compared to simpler constructions. Quote 62. False and fictitious ideas have nothing positive about them, as we have abundantly shown, which causes them to be called false or fictitious. They are only considered as such through the defectiveness of knowledge. Spinoza argues that false and fictitious ideas stem from inadequate knowledge. These ideas lack positive qualities, meaning they do not contribute constructively to understanding. Recognizing the negative impact of such ideas is essential for pursuing true knowledge and avoiding misconceptions. On the Improvement of the Understanding, by Baruch Spinoza, concludes by underscoring the necessity of refining the intellect through a structured method that emphasizes the acquisition of clear and distinct ideas. Spinoza argues that true understanding leads to greater self-awareness and harmony with the natural order, freeing individuals from the limitations of confused thinking and imagination. By presenting rules for perception, logical inquiry, and the pursuit of knowledge, Spinoza's work remains a foundational text for those interested in philosophical methodology and the pursuit of intellectual virtue.
Curious to dive into the mind of Baruch Spinoza? With StudyLab Pro's Book GPT, it's possible. Ask questions, explore themes, and discover the depths of On the Improvement of the Understanding in an entirely new way. Start your conversation now by clicking on our logo, and if you're hungry for more educational content, subscribe to our channel to keep discovering, learning, and growing. Want more than just videos? Click on our logo now to join us on our platform for multiple choice tests, in-depth content, and tools to help you ace your studies. Get started now.